I'm so pleased to welcome today's speaker, Anne Marie Buerkle, who represented the 25th District of New York in the United States Congress from 2011 to 2013. And she spoke to us back then in June of 2011 when she was serving on the Foreign Affairs, Oversight, Government Reform, and Veterans Affairs Committees. During her time in the U.S. House, she championed policies to end the reckless government spending and grow the nation's economy, and she was appointed by the President to serve as one of 2 congressional Republicans to the United Nations. After serving in the U.S. House of Representatives, in 2013, she was appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate as a commissioner at the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, where she currently serves. She was born and raised in Auburn, New York, after her grandparents immigrated to the United States from Italy. She worked in her parents' grocery store, the Mohegan Market, and witnessed the strong work ethic of her parents, who taught her that through hard work, she could achieve the American dream. She graduated from St. Joseph's Hospital School of Nursing as a registered nurse in 1972 and worked in New York City's Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. In 1977, she graduated from Lemoyne College with a Bachelor of Science degree, and she later earned her law degree from Syracuse University College of Law. She worked in a private law firm and was appointed as an assistant New York State Attorney General. For 13 years, she served in that capacity, and in 2010, she took a leave of absence in order to pursue a seat in the United States Congress. In addition to her professional accomplishments, she has 6 grown children and 15 grandchildren, and she says it's her love for the United States and her desire to give her kids and her grandkids the same opportunities that she had that inspires all that she does. So please join me in welcoming back to CWN, Anne Marie Buerkle. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much, and thank you for that kind introduction. Sometimes when I'm feeling tired and I listen to that, I think, oh, maybe that's why I'm tired. I'm just so glad to be back here, and I want to just thank the Claire Booth Luce Society and this opportunity to talk to all of you, because there's nothing more important than your generation and making sure that you're involved and that you can carry on the great legacy of the United States of America. Before we get started, and I've got prepared comments, I would like to ask all of you to keep in your thoughts and prayers the men and women of the military. We live in the greatest nation in the history of the world, and it's because of their service and their sacrifice. As was mentioned, I had the honor of serving on the Veteran Affairs Committee, and when you tour Walter Reed and Bethesda and Brooke Army Medical, you understand the sacrifices that our military makes and their families right alongside of them. So we must never take that for granted. We must always support them and keep them in our prayers. Just recently, this morning, 3 Americans, 2 of them military, were killed in a plane accident in Afghanistan, and off the coast of Virginia, sailors were in a helicopter. There were another 2 or I think 3 sailors, one still missing. So they make that sacrifice day in and day out, and their family makes it alongside of them. I'm not going to go into the introduction. I have a paragraph here because you did such a wonderful job. Thank you very much. And before I start my comments, I thought it might be helpful for me to hear from all of you as to what concerns you and what's on your mind today as we sit here January the 10th, 2014. This is the first meeting of the Conservative Women Network. And I just, what is on your mind? What do you think should be the priorities for the United States of America?
Repealing Obamacare.
Anyone else? Cutting taxes.
Anything else?
Standing strong on the key social issues, life, etc.
And I'm delighted to see one of my former staffers here who now works in the pro-life movement, and Christy O'Brien, thank you for coming. It's so great to see you. Well, and I think probably what was echoed up here in terms of the Affordable Care Act, jobs in the economy, cutting taxes, keeping spending down, those are the things that most Americans, certainly those of us who are paying attention, are concerned about. And we'll get into some of that in just a minute. you know, you come and you hear people talk, and you walk away and you think, oh, what did that person just say? And so before I get into my comments, I just want to leave you with two thoughts that if you don't remember anything else about today, remember these two things. Number one, be grateful that you are fortunate enough to live in the greatest nation in the history of the world, that you are an American citizen and that you live in the United States of America. We sometimes take that for granted, and we must never forget that. And the other really important thing I want you all to remember is that you can be or do anything that you are willing to work hard for and set your mind to. And if you are willing to pick yourself up after you have failed, and you pick yourself up and you start all over again, you can do it. And I hold myself up as a perfect example. You know, I went to a Catholic high school in a small town called Auburn, New York, and when you went and you met with Sister of St. Joseph, she was the guidance counselor, and she gave you like 3 options. And one of them, of course, was to go into the convent, and that was size number 1. And then, you know, back then you became a nurse or a teacher or a homemaker. Those were the choices. No one ever said to me, you can run and be the first woman to sit in this seat and represent your district in Congress. So it isn't easy, and I don't want to let you think it's easy. But what I do want to say to you is you can do it. And don't be deterred. And when I, in 2009, left my job and I started telling people I was interested in running for Congress, my background had been in health and I was really concerned about the Affordable Care Act, they rolled their eyes at me. A lot of them rolled their eyes at me. And you just, if you believe in it and you want to do it, you really need to be undeterred, and don't let the media or anyone else discourage you from doing what God has given you the ability to do. And I think that's a very important component about that, is to make sure you're praying for direction in your life and knowing what it is your calling is. And we all have different talents. We all bring different talents to the table. So those two things, if you don't remember anything else about this morning or this afternoon, please keep those in mind. Okay, let's get started. Today I want to talk to you all about conservatism. And I kind of broke it down into 3 separate buckets that we'll talk about. The first thing I want to talk about are some very fundamental issues within conservatism and within promoting our principles of conservatism. Secondly, I want to talk to you about the obstacles that we find and we encounter as we pursue our core principles. And thirdly, I want to talk to you about some opportunities that I see the Republicans and the conservatives need to really grasp onto these opportunities, because I think there are ways for us to hopefully take back the White House, take back the Senate, and remain in control of the House. I think that for the sake of our nation and generations to come, that really should be the goal of our party and our conservative movement. So let's start with what is pretty obvious and some basic facts. Number 1, 2012 was a bad year for Republicans and conservatives. And really, we have got to make some changes if we're going to move forward and be successful in promoting our conservative causes and beliefs. Number 2, there are many people in this country who believe that if we compromise, if we move to the center, if we somehow give up our core beliefs, that then we will attract more people and we will win elections. And I guess I'm here to tell you all I don't agree with that. I think that the key to getting more people involved and getting more people interested in the Republican Party and into the conservative movement is to stay firm and to let the American people know that we stand for something and we believe in something. And I don't want you to confuse that with perhaps thinking, though, that means we're intractable, we won't compromise, we won't consider all these other options. And I'll get into it a little bit later. But I think we've got to learn as conservatives and Republicans to look at issues not as to, really, I should say, from a 360-degree angle. We look at the entire issue. We look at it, first and foremost, not whether it's a Republican or Democratic issue, but whether it's working or not. And what we're seeing in our nation today is that these liberal, progressive ideas aren't working. And so our key is to show the American people what does work. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But I just want to reiterate, I do not believe that compromising what is so important to us, what is really the core of, I believe, the United States of America, and the way we connect, the essence of how we connect to the American people, we can't compromise that. That's not going to win us elections. The third thing I want to talk about in terms of very basic and obvious thoughts is that conservatism is hard. It's a hard message to articulate. It's a hard, when we encounter a problem, when we look at the health care, and we all identified that there was a problem with health care in this country, our liberal friends turn to the government for answers. They look to appropriate money and solve the problem with the bureaucracy. But conservatives don't do that. Conservatives believe that the answers and the solutions to these monumental problems in this country lie with the American people. But that's a more difficult road to take because it requires getting people involved, selling what you want to do to those people, getting the money from the private sector and getting people on board so that they will espouse and understand these critical issues. And so it's really easier just to turn to the Congress or to turn to the Senate and say, okay, what law are we going to pass? And prime example is the Affordable Care Act. That's how we're going to resolve. That's how we're going to resolve the health care issues in this country. And it's not working. I don't have to tell you all that. But I do want to say conservatism is difficult, but it's the right way for us to go and the right way for the United States of America to go. So let's talk just a few minutes about the obstacles that we face as conservatives. I think the first, and it kind of dovetails into what I just talked about, how difficult it is, and that is messaging. It's difficult to message conservative principles. We have to inspire people. That's the task of a conservative, to inspire people that this is a better way to go for the United States of America. It's a better way to go because our principles empower people. Our principles lift people up. And that's far better than making them dependent on the federal government. And so, but it's not an easy task to articulate and to make that message clear to the American people. And that's an obstacle we face. And until and unless we make our messaging clearer and we are able to inspire, a lot of Americans are just going their own way, living their own lives, and a lot of people within the conservative movement. And I think that's one of the issues we've suffered, is that conservatives tend to be working, raising their families, being concerned about their children and their education, and they're not paying attention to the bigger picture. I was in Kentucky a week ago visiting my daughter. We were in a conservative church, and the pastor stood up and he was saying how we need to pray for this country. Yes, we do need to pray for this country, but we also must get involved. We also must get like-minded people in government, because I think, and this kind of dovetails into my next obstacle we face, the media. The media has intimidated people from getting involved. They've intimidated people from even expressing their views, because if you pick up a paper, and I can talk about my own local paper, and Christy can acknowledge this, have from the time I declared until as recently as last week, they've been on a vendetta and to just go after me. And just last week it was a whole issue that, now I've been out of Congress a year, and they're still going after me. The media really, and I think the biggest problem we have with the media is it intimidates and it makes conservatives think that they're like the only one who thinks that way. And one of the things that you all can do, would you leave this room today and as you go forward, is you can talk to people and you can empower other women that no, you are not alone when you want the best for your kids, or you want more opportunities for your kids, or you don't want this Affordable Care Act. You want to make sure health care stays the quality of health care that we have in this country. And so that's a problem we have with the media, and I think it does intimidate. But getting back to the messaging, because I left out a very important component, we need, as Republicans and conservatives, to let the country know, and the people who live in this country, that we are not a party of white, rich men. And that is a huge problem in our messaging, and something that we have to change that. We have to really insist and show through our conversations, through our policies, that we're a party for all Americans, the wealthy, the poor, the African Americans, Latinos, the urban, the rural, That the values we hold so dear are those values that will lift everyone up. And that's a very important message that we're not getting out there. I really, there's a stereotype that fits with the Republican Party, and we need to break that. And you all in this room can begin to make those changes. And that leads me to the third obstacle we face, and I can say that I've really encountered it firsthand, and that is stereotypes. The media, and primarily the media, has made conservatives out to be crazy right-wing radicals. When it was mentioned, I just began in July as a commissioner at the Consumer Product Safety Commission. I cannot tell you from the time I started up until yesterday, we had our coffee in our office, people come up to me and they say, "Oh my gosh, we were so nervous about you. I thought I was going to have snakes coming out of my ears. I don't know what, because of my conservative, because I was supposedly a Tea Party person, and to this day I don't know what a Tea Party person is. There's no political party. There are Americans who believe that the Constitution is as relevant today as it was when it was written. And so, but that's the stereotype that conservatives find themselves in. And again, the media plays into that. Because it's what the paper did to me. If they can make you marginalize you, if they can make you irrelevant, or they can make you sound like what you're espousing is radical, and nothing we espouse is radical. You all know that in this room, to the very core of your being. We are talking about what made this country the greatest country ever. The individual responsibilities and rights coming from our almighty Creator, that's what we value. That's not radical at all, and we all know that. But that's the stereotype that we face as conservatives in this country. And I will say that we are guilty on the other side, and we need to be very careful of this. And this kind of dovetails into my next section on opportunities, that we can't stereotype. We can't look at a group and say, well, they never vote Republican. They're not conservatives, and we write them off. So getting into where I think that there are opportunities for a conservative movement in this country, number one, with women. I think that we need to articulate a message to women that this healthcare system, women are they're mostly the healthcare decisions. I've got healthcare. I've got the healthcare proxy for my mother, who's 92. I'm getting ready to go to Texas. One of my daughters is having a baby. We are intimately involved in healthcare. So this whole rollout may enlighten some women that the Affordable Care Act is not a good way to go. Education. Women are very interested in education. So we've got to articulate a message to women that there is a place for you in this Republican Party, that what we care about, you care about. And we're not doing a very good job of that. You know, the whole, and part of attracting women to our conservative movement is the hypocrisy on the other side. Now, feature this. When I ran in 2010, I had now picketing my campaign office. Now, I am a mother of 6. I went to law school when I was 40. I should be the poster child for now, right? You know, and Christy knows that we were vilified by women's groups because we didn't go lock and step with the life issue. That's the only thing that I can conclude. And liberal policies in general, government running more, you know. But the hypocrisy of the women's movement, you know, when I was defeated in 2012, the liberal groups targeted women. Mary Bono Mack, Judy Biggert, Nan Hayworth, myself. They defeated us. From the time I was elected in January of 2011 until my defeat, I was targeted. And you say, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And so it's going to be up to us to expose the hypocrisy of women's groups in this country. And that is the conservatives who truly care about women and advancing their cause. And that we are we have far more depth than our solely. And what we hear is our reproductive rights. There's so much more to women. And that whole initiative and the way they've really co-opted the women's vote is based on that. And it's going to be up to us to show women we are far more than that. We have far more depth than that. And we're concerned about our kids getting jobs when they go to college, about a strong economy, you know, that's pandering, and it's an insult to women, and we should take it as such. So I left my stereotypes and I went into the cracks, and where are there cracks, and where can we infiltrate? And I think women is one. I think teachers, historically, teachers' unions are always, you know, they vote Democratic. Rather than looking to the union leaders, I think we need to get to the teachers. There are so many teachers, and we talked to a lot of them during the last campaign, who are so disenchanted and so upset with core curriculum, with Race to the Top, with No Child Left Behind. This movement to nationalize our education system is frustrating teachers who set out with a mission, and that mission was to educate kids, and they're being really, they're hamstrung, and they're limited as to what they can do. I see the USDA just reversed their whole ruling on food and what kids can eat. But the teachers, I think, is a very fertile ground because they're so frustrated with this federalization of education, and they really believe that the education decision should be left to the state and the local governments. Syracuse, New York knows what's best for Syracuse, New York. Washington doesn't. The bureaucrats down here don't. So I think teachers are a very fertile ground. And I think if we can make some headway and headroads into the teachers. And I think healthcare workers are another group that we should be able to make our case to. Physicians, nurses, folks in local hospitals up in our neck of the woods, they've laid off people because of the Affordable Care Act. People who are intimately involved in healthcare understand that this law, among a whole myriad of problems, this law is going to really affect the quality of healthcare, affect the ability to access physicians and health care. And it really is not what we needed in this country. So I think healthcare workers are another area that we can, that we should be able to get our message to. And again, that message is, it is a conservative message, but it's also a message about what works. This past week, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the War on Poverty. Thank you, LBJ. $20.7 trillion have been spent on the War on Poverty. And where are we? We are at the same percentage of Americans at or below the federal poverty guidelines. So these policies don't work. Don't make it a Republican or a Democratic issue. They don't work. You've got this Affordable Care Act. You've got education. You've got the war on poverty. Are we saying, and this is where the message gets tricky and it gets challenging, we're not saying we don't care about the poor. We're saying the way to lift the people out of poverty is to give them opportunities. And all of this war on poverty and all of these handouts do not do that. They keep people down. They make them dependent on the government. And that is not the United States of America, and that's not the right way to go for this country. We talked about my grandparents. They all came here as teenagers from Italy. They never spoke English. And my parents were so determined that we were going to have opportunities that they didn't have. My father worked, he was an insurance salesman, we had a grocery store, he had roller skating rinks. He'd work 18 to 20 hours a day. And to take a nickel from the government, that was a complete disgrace. You would never even consider that as an option. You just go out and work harder. Now, somewhere in between, there is, and especially with the economy the way it is, and that's another thing that's not working. Look at today, the unemployment number came out, dropped to 6.7. Only 74,000 new jobs were created this past month in this country. That's the lowest in 3 years. We are not on a path to economic recovery because these policies don't work. And as we sell our conservatism, that's the approach we got to take. We do care about people, but we care about people so much that we respect their innate abilities. We want to give them a chance. We want to lift them up. We don't want to keep them down. We don't want to keep them subservient to government. Let me mention that. So, in conclusion, and I think we'll have time for questions, yes. Won't we? Okay. I want to encourage all of you that conservatism is nothing to be ashamed of. You should be proud of the principles and the core beliefs that you have. It is really something that we really need to embrace it and not run away from conservatism, because the conservative policies really offer more to people. They are what this country was intended to be. And so we need to be proud of them and continue to really educate and message so that we can get more Americans involved. In doing so, we will not only win elections, but we will change our country for the better. We will ensure that our children and our grandchildren have access to all the opportunities that we had, that we will achieve the true American dream of ensuring that we hand off to the next generation a better United States of America. And you know, that has been historically really the hallmark of this country, something that is unique to the United States of America, and that is each generation hands off a better United States of America. And right now, we're not going to do that to this next generation. It's so unfair that's what being done to you. The debt of this nation is something that will be on the backs of generation after generation. It's why we need to get back to our fiscal responsibility and our roots of not spending more money than we take in as a government. The country has been doing this for 3 decades now. And the debt has just, that we're giving to the next generation is unconscionable. And it really is something that my generation is really responsible for. And really we need to make sure that we change policies so that we don't do that to the next generation. Again, excuse me, I want to say to all of you that this is not easy. It is a very steep hill that we have to climb. Our current leaders need to be resilient. We need them to continue to fight for the values we hold dear. It is they and they who they serve that who share their principles that will lead us into a new chapter of conservatism. However, I'm so sorry, they can't do it alone. They need more great candidates. We need people from all walks of life and all backgrounds. We need people to take up the charge just like they did in the colonial days, where you go down to Washington as a civilian, not as a career politician, and you take up you're representing your district and you stick to the conservative principles and the Constitution that made this country so great. We have too many career politicians. I often talk about, you know, considering term limits. We have too many people that have made politics and their office a way of life. And it's something that really, I think, has been to the detriment of the United States of America. I want to encourage all of you, and as I mentioned earlier in Kentucky when the pastor mentioned that about praying, praying is very important for this nation. But representing and getting involved is equally as important, I believe. I think that we have a moral commitment, and it's not easy, but a moral commitment to get involved and to do what we can do. And it starts in a little coffee group, it starts in your family, and it grows from there. And educating and really talking about the conservative principles that we all hold so dear. I think as far as women go, we need more women in government. Women are problem solvers, women are multitaskers, women are creative in their solutions to problems. We need more women to get involved. And so any way we can do that, certainly this type of a forum encourages you all and hopefully inspires you. And I think that's something the conservative movement needs to do more of, really inspire women to get involved and to give them the support they need so that they are not fearful and they are not concerned with the backlash that they may feel from the media or from their liberal counterparts. Some races we will win at the polls and others we will not. But every time you have a conversation with anyone, anytime you espouse the conservative values and you make the case for conservative principles, we win. And we can't look at wins or losses. We have to look at advancing our cause. And because you know why? It's not about you and it's not about me. It is about the United States of America. And this nation right now, and it's why I ran in 2010 and we had 87 freshmen and the whole conservative movement was so vocal. We're headed in the wrong direction. So many things are not working right now. Our foreign policy, our economic policy, our healthcare policy, our education policy. And unless and until we get conservatives in office, and I would strongly encourage women to get involved, we will not change that. And that's the reality of where we're at in this country. I'll just finish where I began, and that is that we have a steep mountain to climb, and we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. But by embracing our conservatism, standing up for and not running away from, sharing our message with all Americans, we will lead this great nation into a brighter, better future for our kids and for our grandkids. God bless you all. Thanks for coming today, and may God bless the greatest nation ever, the United States of America. Thank you so much.
Any questions?
Oh, sure.
She does inspire us, doesn't she? She's wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. You're fighting the fight in Washington, and I don't want you to be a career politician, but I hope someday you go back there. You had 2 years. Okay?
Believe me,
you learned
believe me,
a lot.
it's crossed my mind.
Oh, good, good, good. Okay, well, we have a couple ladies here. Oh, Laurel Conrad, she goes to Cornell. That's up not too far
very nice
from
to
you.
meet you.
She's an intern. She comes back and helps at Christmas time. She's heading back to school tomorrow. And Jeannie O'Connor's got the other mic. Jeannie's administrative director. She's been with the Institute how many years? 13 years. This is what you want on your resume, young ladies. You want to stay places if you can, as long as possible, because you come so valuable, don't you? Yeah. When you've done a job for 13 years.
The institutional knowledge, that's
yes,
right.
Yes. Okay, so shall I let you call on people? And if you wouldn't mind giving your name, wait for the mic, because C-SPAN is recording this, and your affiliation if you have one. And, oh, here's a question right here.
Thank you for your great talk. My name is Brittany Baldwin, and I work on the Hill for Senator Cruz from Texas. And my question is, how, especially since you are really at the gross level back in your district, what have you found to be the most effective ways of collecting stories from people, specifically teachers and people in the medical field, where those areas are areas where people are hurting and they're feeling the changes, but sometimes making that a narrative and getting that message out and kind of putting it in real terms can be a challenging thing.
Well, the anecdotes kind of come, and they did come to me. People were anxious to tell their story. I did a lot of town halls, probably 60 or 65 town halls during the period of time, and people were anxious either in a town hall or subsequently to let you know their story. What we did, and I would recommend this to any of you, we began to have women's groups, and we started out with a group of women who were 6 of us, and we had the next event was at a restaurant, and each person invited 5 people, and I talked about conservative values and what I stood for. And then the next event was the new people invited 5 people, and we grew until we had a luncheon. We had over 300 people there. That's what we have to do, and people want to tell their story. They're frustrated, and as soon as you give them that opportunity where they're not intimidated and they don't feel like they're the only one who's encountered this, you know, I can't imagine if you went out and you put up a website, how many people have lost their health care coverage? How many people would respond to that? So giving them that forum and kind of that assurance that they are not alone. They're not just some fringe person who's encountered this. It's a lot of people feel and think the same way that they do.
I have a question.
Yes.
You want to bring me a mic?
You can use this one.
Yes, I'm Becky Norton Dunlop from the Heritage Foundation. One of the things that we talk about often as the core conservative idea is the concept of fusionism, where people who are economic and foreign policy and defense conservatives and people who are social conservatives and are concerned about education and marriage and life actually rely upon each other for the success of what they believe. And I wonder if you identify with that, that we're all kind of in the same boat, so to speak, the fusionist boat, where economic, foreign policy, defense, education, life, marriage, it all has to work in order for our nation to work and prosper.
I am in that fusionist boat, and I think, you know, the reality of it is that some people think that the economy is their issue. That's what they care about. Others, health care. Others, the social issues. Everyone has a different priority. Rarely do you meet someone whose everything is their priority. But making them feel like they have a place to go where there are like-minded people, I think, is very important. And if their issue is the economy, you know, that's an easy one. You let them come in and you give them a place where they can, you know, they can feel like they have support as well. You know, I think where it becomes difficult, quite honestly, is some folks just are, you know, unless you think exactly like they do, then it becomes a problem. And, you know, you can, I think, give people a comfortable place to go, a safe place to go without agreeing and without compromising your values. But it goes back to the stereotypes. It goes back to really appreciating and understanding and respecting people for where they are at. And oftentimes it's a question of education and enlightening them on the issues, but not judging them because they don't think exactly like you. But allow them to see where you're coming from and continue to educate them and not to judge them. And that goes back, as I mentioned, to the stereotypes where oh, that person, they don't think like I do, they're hopeless. You know, one of the best, I should say one of the most unusual alliances I had in Congress was the local head of the ACLU. There were certain issues that we really found common ground on, and certainly the NSA issue has come to light since that time. But some of the privacy issues, you know, but being able to have that conversation, you don't know how you're affecting people. You don't know what seed you're planting. And so if you write them off because they don't agree with you on every issue, that's, and I just want to make sure it's not compromising your values. That's just educating them and giving them a place to go because, gee, we agree on these 3 issues. Let's not destroy the relationship because of that.
You served up there for 2 years. I'll bet you among these ladies, one of them at some point is going to run. What advice would you give? I mean, what are the couple of things that you really feel you did well? And what are some things that maybe you'd go back and do again?
What I thought we really did well, and Caitlin's in the back and Christy, was we made serving our district and the people I represented our #1 priority. I really believed, and it was part of my sadness when we lost. We gave a voice to people, you know, whether they needed help with a project or they needed help with their Social Security, or we did a huge veterans outreach piece. I really believed that we were serving the people the way government was meant to be. That we were their voice in Washington. All the town halls we had and the teletown halls and all the communications that we had with the people who lived there, I really felt like we had given them a voice and we provided a great service to them. I think of all the things we did, that's really what I was most proud of. You know, you make decisions when you're running. The one that I really don't regret anything. I can look in the mirror every day and I can say I never compromised who I was. I didn't change my campaign spiel once I got in office. I voted against the Budget Control Act. I had some key votes that were against, that weren't with my party. But I believed that that was the right thing to do and what I had pledged, really promised that I would do when I went to Washington. So I don't have any regrets other than the fact we didn't win. I mean, but you say to yourself, there must be another plan, there must be another purpose, and so you pick up, and now we're over in the CPSC, which is a whole other challenge.
Anyone else? Oh, here's one.
Vanessa Kermick, CIT Group. As a conservative woman, it's been tough to find a mentor, going through my career. Did you have someone that you would call a mentor? And do you have any advice in that same vein?
That's a great question. I really didn't. My father was my mentor in that he inspired me with a work ethic. And he would just face problems. He would stare them down and figure out a way through problems and pick himself up. So he really was my inspiration. Mentors are difficult, and maybe that's something that we can talk about providing direction and resources to women. And there are some groups down here, and certainly, some of my friends that are still members of the House, to do that, to provide direction and support. Because if oftentimes, again, it's intimidating when you feel like if you're in a law firm. I had a dear friend who is actually a partner in the law firm. She's a conservative woman, and she's been in practice a long time. She was a trailblazer for women, very conservative, very pro-life, and you wonder where she got the toughness to do that. I mean, she just did it on her own, because the media isn't going to make you feel like, warm and fuzzy and you're great because you're conservative. You fight against the odds. And then, quite honestly, women in a law firm or in politics, it's a male-dominated profession. And that's the reality of it. And it's turning a little bit, but I think the more women, the more young women who get involved, who are very clear in their purpose and they want to articulate their view, and then women, Marsha Blackburn, Diane Black, they're just women who are so competent that becomes a non-issue. But to actually get into, whether it's practicing law or I think healthcare is better, but politics it's a tough venue, and women do need mentors to help guide them through the system, and one that sometimes is not. I know my own race was a little bit hostile to women. No one had ever run for that seat. It was held by a Republican for 20 years, and there was another fellow involved who had money, and I didn't. And he was the favored, and I had to, I got the nomination ultimately. But those are the kinds of things, I have to tell you, I have a character flaw. As soon as someone tells me I can't do it, or you won't do it, this little thing goes off in my head that says, okay, now I got to do it. And, it was like law school when I was 40, it's just, you can't go to law school with 6 kids, and, So I don't want to push that character flaw on you, but it's in my situation, I just kept plowing forward. But mentoring and having that support, I think, is a wonderful goal, and we really should do more of it.
All right, well, I don't think it's a character flaw. I think it's a character strength. And I want to thank you on behalf of everyone here and the millions of people watching on C-SPAN. What a good talk.
Thank you
I
very
feel
much.
ready to go out and fight some more. And
we need you all. We need you very much to be involved one way, shape, or form.
We have a couple of gifts for you.
Oh, nice.
A couple years ago, Anne Marie was in our Great American Conservative Woman calendar. So I want to give you our 2014 calendar.
Thank you.
It's available
very
on our
much.
website, cblpi.org. Also, I know you got one of these before, but this is a new version of our limited edition coffee mug with Mrs. Lewis's famous saying,
No good
Deed goes unpunished.
no good deed goes unpunished.
Wonderful. Thank
And then,
you.
of course, a tote bag. Every lady needs a Claire Booth Lewis tote bag.
Thank you so very much.
And I will say the Heritage Foundation has a little something here for you as well, so you can remember your visit here today. I mentioned Fusionism, and Frank Meyer, who's a fellow New Yorker, wrote this great book, In Defense of Freedom, which is a classic. I hope you haven't gone entirely to e-books, and you still have a few of these on your bookshelf. But we hope you enjoy that, and maybe you'll get some inspiring thoughts from that as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here today.
Thank you
and
so very much.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you
at
all very
CPSC.
much. Thank you.
And we've got a little lunch for you across the hallway. We're delighted you're all here, and please be sure to shake our speaker's hand and thank her for her great work. See you next month.